Hi guys, welcome back to Future of Nations. So what most people are missing, let me ask you something. Why would Pakistan mediate a dispute between Iran and US? Why would China care enough to quietly support diplomacy? Why would Russia stay calm instead of taking sides? None of that happens if it is a two-country conflict, which tells us one thing. This isn't the story most people think it is. This is not one conflict anymore. It's a multi-layered geopolitical game where Iran is only one piece on a much bigger board. Let's talk about each of these nations, how they are contributing and how they are playing. Pakistan's mediation isn't charity. Let's be very clear about one thing upfront. Pakistan is not mediating because it loves Iran. It is definitely not doing it for free. And Pakistan needs a lot right now. Pakistan is under serious economic pressure. Foreign reserves are thin. Debt talks keep coming up. Domestic unrest hasn't gone away. So when Pakistan suddenly shows up as a mediator, this isn't altruism. This is a strategic survival. Here is a simple logic. When powerful countries need someone to quietly pass messages, they don't look for the strongest economy. They look for someone relevant, desperate enough to engage, but trusted enough to be useful. Pakistan fits that gap. By mediating, Pakistan puts itself back on US line of sight. It becomes diplomatically useful again. And usefulness often turns into financial relief, military cooperation, or debt flexibility. This is the leverage. This is not love on Iran. Now add geography into this mix. Pakistan shares a long, unstable border with Iran. If this conflict explodes, refugees don't fly, they walk. Militancy spills across border. Internal security gets worse, and Pakistan already has enough internal problems, like one from Afghanistan, the other from Balochistan. So mediation serves two purposes at once: external relevance, getting fame around; internal damage control, get financial approvals and pay the debt to others like UAE, who is right now, putting a lot of pressure on Pakistan. There is also one more layer, but most people miss. Pakistan isn't speaking for Iran. It is acting as a mailbox. Messages go in, go out. Pakistan doesn't decide any terms. It just keeps the line open. That matters because Iran doesn't want to talk directly to the US. US doesn't want public negotiations that looks like weakness. Pakistan observes that political discomfort. And yes, this also strengthens Pakistan's relationship with China. China prefers stability, not chaos. And Pakistan presenting itself as a stabilizer aligns well with the Beijing wants. So I would say no, Pakistan is not doing this for Iran. It's doing this for their own country, just for relevance, survival, leverage, and long-term positioning. So this is not about loyalty. No, because people, especially Pakistan, keep saying that we are loyalty, it's a Muslim brotherhood and all. And I don't believe in that. It's not about that. This is about staying in the game when your economy is fragile and your options are limited. So, but what about China then? We all know what is happening. This war is not between Iran and US. The actual reality, everybody knows, with whom the US is fighting as such. China isn't sending warships. It's not making loud speeches. It's definitely not trying to lead this crisis publicly. But China has a lot at stake here. China is one of the largest buyers of Middle East oil, especially Iranian oil. A regional war would disrupt shipping routes, which we all seen already. Spike energy prices. We've been through that for the last 6 to 8 weeks right now, and it will definitely hurt China's economy. So stability matters a lot, right? But the most important is China doesn't want Middle East completely dominated by US, and that's the game which is happening over here. That's why the China supports de-escalations. At the same time, they don't want Iran collapse. If Iran weakens too much, US influence expands. Energy leverage shifts. China lose a strategic partner in the Middle East, and that they don't want to do that. If Iran pushes too far, again, a full war breakout, energy supply suffers, China pays the price because they are the largest country who is been taking oil from Iran. So China's strategy is careful balance. Quietly encourages diplomacy through Pakistan, pressure without open escalation, keeping Iran strong enough to negotiate, not fight, and China is betting on conflict. It's betting on control, patience, and long-term positioning. So, but then we also see Russia very much silence, right? There's no noise from there at all. But we all know that Russia is strategically a partner to Iran. Russia might not be making noise, but it's paying it very close attention. From Moscow's perspective, one thing matters more than anything else for them. It is focus. If the United States is tied down in the Middle East, that's a less attention elsewhere. At the same time, Russia doesn't actually want a big war in the Middle East, because again, a full regional war would destabilize energy markets, create unpredictable price swings, damage Russia's own economic planning. So Russia approach is quite support for balance. It maintains military and diplomatic ties with Iran. It coordinates on energy. It blocks, it backs messaging that limits Western dominance. But you should notice what Russia is not doing actually. It's not leading this. It is not escalating. It's not trying to turn this into a direct confrontation. But it benefits most when tensions remain managed, not explosive. In all these situations, what US is really trying to do? A lot of people assume that the US wants war. The reality is more complicated. The full-scale war with Iran would actually shut down major shipping routes, which we already seen. The Strait of Hormuz, Bab el-Mandeb, all these routes are very strategically been there, and anything happens to them, it will send oil prices soaring, hurt US allies in Europe and Asia, create global economic shock. So the US strategy is containment, not invasion. What is containment mean? Like, military positioning without ground war. But I think after a few weeks, we might see this as well too, naval presence to control sea routes. And already Trump is talking about this for the last, weeks and days. And he's also trying his best to diplomatic pressure paid with back channels like Pakistan. Deterrence with escalation. The goal isn't to defeat Iran. The goal is to limit Iran's choice. Keep the pressure high, avoiding triggering a regional explosion. Protecting allies with maintaining the leverage. That's why US actions feel intense but restrained. As of now, US don't have much cards to play. They can go for two options. Option one, they completely make Iran paralyzed, so they obey to US, whatever the conditions they put. Or option two is a full war to remove the regime again. But my strong belief, both options are not the right one. I'll make another video on this. Can Iran be fully paralyzed, or can a one more full war to remove this Iranian regime, can this be successful or not? It's a big video again. It's a different topic, the strength and weakness of both countries. Meanwhile, if you find this analysis useful, then please do subscribe. That one button of subscribe will motivate me and will help me to create much better content in my next videos. Alright, let's move on to the next topic. The next chapter is, let's talk about Gulf countries who are preparing quietly for something else. Look at the Gulf: Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Oman, Bahrain. They are in calm. They're terrified. Their oil facilities sit in a missile range. Their tourism survive on stability. Their economies run on confidence. One attack doesn't just destroy infrastructure. It destroys incidents, flight, investments, and trust as well. And here is the hard truth they see. If Iran's current regime survives stronger, the pressure won't stop. This will come back again and again and again. That's why some Gulf states quietly believe a decisive outcome now may be safer than another 20 years of threat. Not because they want a war, but because they fear delay. In all these things, we have to also look at the European countries and what are they trying, how they are contributing. I don't think they're contributing is the right word for the war. But my intention is to say that, what heroic things they are doing from their side. Europe isn't trying to be heroic here. It's trying to survive the consequences. Every time this war escalates, Europe feels it almost immediately. Not with missiles, but with bills. Oil prices rise. Gas markets shake. Supply chains tense up. Europe already learned this lesson hard way with Ukraine. So when energy routes around the Middle East even look unstable, Europe's economy flinches. There's another fear in Europe. They doesn't say it out loud. War in the Middle East doesn't stay regional. It pushes people out of home. It sends refugees towards Europe's borders. It fuels political chaos inside European capitals. Government falls over these small things like this. That's why Europe is pushing diplomacy so aggressively, not because it believes wars are powerful, but because delay is cheaper than disaster. One more thing that they already know about this, they're so uncomfortable too. Europe doesn't control the conflict. Europe doesn't have the military leverage to end it, and they doesn't have the unity to absorb prolonged shock. So it leans on talks, pauses, and negotiations, anything that buys time. So Europe isn't shaping this war. It's trying to avoid being crushed by the aftershocks, because they are the biggest nation and the first first impact you would see of these energy prices soaring and everything in that place. And I also want to talk about 1 minute more on especially United Nations role and its limits. The United Nations is everywhere in this conflict, and at the same time it controls almost nothing. That's not a contradiction. That's the reality of how UN works. When tensions rise, the UN shows up first, meetings, statements, emergency sessions, strong words about peace. You can see everywhere in the media, talking that, this, humanitarian, everything. But the problem is the United Nations doesn't decide wars. It reflects on them. It's just a reflection. Every major decision depends on the same countries that are already fighting this battle through pressure, money, and power. When those players disagree, the UN freezes. Resolutions stall, vetoes fly, language gets watered down until it offends no one and stops nothing. So the UN shifts its role. It stops trying to control outcomes and focuses on damage control. It talks about ceasefire because stopping the bleeding matters. It pushes humanitarian access because civilians are always the first to pay, like we are the common people. It documents violations because history will need a record even if justice comes later. That's the uncomfortable truth. The UN isn't weak because it lacks intelligence. It's weak because there is no power which lives in UN. UN doesn't have any power. The power lives with the states that fund armies, control energy, and decide escalation. And those states don't outsource survival. So the UN becomes the witness. It tells the world this is dangerous, this is spiraling, this will cost lives. Just like in a corporate world, we call this project managers, right? That's it. It will only it will make sure that there is a risk and it actually puts the risk on the table, but it cannot force anyone to listen. In this conflict, the UN is the voice reminding everyone what is at the risk, while knowing the final choice will be made somewhere else. So UN doesn't stop wars. It is just records them, just like a project manager, keep all the artifacts for the program. And he will say after all the program is done, he'll create one more small thing called as lessons learned to just showcase to the next program, the next war, which is going to come somewhere, and go and tell them this is what will happen if you don't follow. So ridiculous. I always feel United Nations is just like a project manager role. He has nothing. He has no power. At least in corporate IT sectors, we have project managers holding most of the accountability and responsibility to drive the project and complete it. And these guys don't have even that accountability also. They just keep shouting and talking, and nothing else can they do. So finally, the bigger picture is that no, this war never just Iran versus the United States. That explanation is too small for what's unfolding as such. What we are watching is Pakistan stepping in to stay relevant and contains spillover. China balancing stability against long-term influence. Russia is observing, calculating where distractions create advantage. The US applying pressure, terrified of lighting a fuse it can't put out. Gulf states bracing because their oil, tourism, and survival sit on one strike away. Europe is racing diplomacy against rising energy cost and political fallout. And the United Nations standing between words and reality, trying to slow the damage. This isn't a battlefield. It's a global pressure test. Every move forces a reaction somewhere else. Every escalation sends shockwaves far beyond Iran. That's why strength alone doesn't decide what comes next. Because this raw power can start fire, but it cannot always control them. What happens next won't be decided by who shouts the loudest or who strikes first. It will be decided by who understands just how fragile this board really is and how costly a single misstep could become. This is a chessboard. This is a chessboard where no piece can fail without the whole board shaking. And right now, the world is one move away from finding out who calculated wrong. And guys, please do watch my previous video related to Iran war so you can understand today's video much better. And guys, if this video helped you see beyond headlines, please hit like. It truly gives me the energy to keep doing this. Your comments influence what I cover next. And please subscribe. It helps this video reach more people trying to understand a changing world. Stay informed, stay curious. This is Future of Nations. See you in the next one. Bye.